All right, welcome back. Here we go. Chapter 8, Hire Great Teachers. Well, this is obvious, right? Todd Whitaker, hire great teachers and your school should be great. And we've already talked many chapters about, how to get here, and teachers are the variable and they make the difference. And he's exactly right. I mean, teachers, this is not brain surgery here. Hire great teachers and your organization should be better. So how do you get to that point? How do you hire great teachers? There's so many different laws of leadership that I can talk about here. You've got the law of magnetism, right? The law of attraction. You are who you attract. And anytime that you're not attracting the level of educators that you want in your organization, you need to take a look in the mirror, because you are who you attract. And that means that the perception of your school is not attractive, right, to great teachers. So what do? Todd's already told us the only two ways to improve a school are to get better teachers or to improve the teachers that you have. But let's just talk this little session about hiring great teachers. There's a couple things that I want you to really think about, all right? One, I love this quote by John Maxwell. He says, charisma gets you in the door, but character will keep you in the room. Charisma gets you in the door, but character keeps you in the room. What does that mean? How many times have you been burned on a screening phone call or just a sit-down interview? Me, many times. I don't do it anymore, right? It wasn't even part of our vocabulary by the time we got to my third year as a principal. The first thing that we did is we needed to know what type of person were we looking for, because our culture of our school, I've already talked about this, was very unique. We were a tight group who had high expectations, non-negotiables in terms of the curriculum and the instructional practices and our uniforms and how we expected students to carry themselves on a daily basis, right? So in order to do that, we had to bring folks in, because everybody thought that they wanted to be part of our culture until they got in our culture sometimes for 3 months, and it was a little overwhelming for them, right? So the first thing that we did is, if you wanted to apply for a job at our school, you could. You had to go get your criminal background check, and you could come to campus. And you had to spend at minimum 2 to 3 days on campus. Now, typically, what may happen first is that I would ask a teacher, I'd give them a resume, say, hey, this person's applying for a job. Can you do the initial screening? So they would do a phone call. We had a set of questions that we would ask, and then the teacher would get a feel, and they'd say, hey, why don't you come, right? And so they had to get a criminal background check. They would spend a few days on campus, and after that, we would say, what do you think? Would you like to continue on with the application process? And whether they did or not, that was their choice. 9 times out of 10, they said yes. Great. So next thing you know is they filled out the rest of their application, okay? And what we began to do is they were assigned a teacher mentor, and they would the expectation would they would spend somewhere between 20 and 40 hours with that mentor over the next week or two, all depending on the time frame in which we needed a job, which we needed somebody filled. And I would be a hypocrite to say that we didn't fast track some of this process sometimes when we needed someone. I think I just talked about that in the last video. But so they would come on campus, they would spend some time, right? They would start to kind of understand our kids and our culture and the expectations on a daily basis. They'd start to learn the teacher, and then the teacher would set up an interview with maybe their grade level or content area, whatever that might be. Then if they got through the interview and then we would have them do a mock lesson, right? They would have to teach 1 or 2 classrooms, all depending on what they wanted to teach, right? So now we're up to 5, 6, 7 days on campus in some sense. So we're starting to get a sense of whether the person really is hungry for a job and really understands of where we're trying to go with this, right? Because we only had 10 total teachers on campus, and we've already learned that one teacher, character-wise, can completely annihilate your culture. So we had initial screening, time on campus, then we had a deeper time on campus, right? A little bit more mentorship and coaching, and then mock lessons, and they would set it up so I could come and I might spend 5, 10, 15 minutes in the class. It all depends. Usually I could tell pretty pretty close whether they understood, just based upon just the time on task in the classroom and what was actually happening with our students. Then, as a final piece, I may do an interview, or we may do a last interview, and then get them and offer them a spot. So why was that so important? Well, here's what happened. The induction to our school really began with that initial call, right? And even more ahead of that, we had an idea of we needed to have an idea of who we were looking for, right? We almost created an avatar for the ideal teacher at our school. And the ideal teacher at our school, one, had to accept feedback. I mean, because our school was very heavy in terms of giving feedback to teachers. Sometimes it was overly critical, I would agree. But you had to have some thick skin. Two, you had to have an understanding that our curriculum was our curriculum, and we weren't going to budge. We were Saxon's math, 90-minute classes. There was a little bit more autonomy when it came to social studies, science and language arts, but Saxon math was it. That's what we did. And if you taught in the lower levels, it was a direct instruction approach. So we learned those non-negotiables, and we tried to weed out the people who weren't going to fit, right? It's folks who might have been more inquiry-based, whole language-based, just might have a really, really challenging time, right? So we started with the first question, right? And then we had a process. We had a set systems and checklists and process in place. And and our whole goal was to be responsive and never reactive. There was a couple times, every time I was reactive in hiring, failed. I can't think of one teacher who's probably still there or who lasted more than a year that was a reactive hire, okay? And that was being a younger leader, didn't have that in place. So I'm telling you, if you're watching this and in your first year or so opening school, it's really challenging. You're going to have turnover at the beginning, but that's because you're learning of the avatar of who's going to fit well in your school, okay? And if you don't have this avatar and you've been leading for a few years, work with your leadership team. Say, hey, who's the ideal teacher for us? So when we are advertising job descriptions, we're not just, here's all the things you're responsible for. We're actually specifically looking for, people who are humble, hungry, and smart, and can accept feedback and collaborate and communicate well with others, and take the time to understand that if a student fails, it's not always the student's fault. 9 times out of 10, it's not their fault. It's you. Right? There's no such thing as a bad audience, only bad speakers. So again, if you want to learn more about our hiring process, go ahead and reach out to me. I'd be happy to set up a consultation call with you. Jeff or I, we're both at the same school, and we've learned about other schools' hiring process too, so we would love to collaborate with you and share. Again, you can email me at tom@leaders-building-leaders.com. Go to our website, leadersbuildingleaders.com, or give me a phone call. And we would love to set up a session for you to make sure you are hiring the best, and not only hiring the best, but keeping them for some time. Have a great day, everybody.